Early on Friday morning, 10th October, the Israeli government approved the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal during a meeting that included U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. As the ceasefire went into effect, Palestinians flooded back to North Gaza to see what remains of their homes as Israel conducted a scorched earth strategy that has seen whole swathes of territory reduced to rubble. The first critical deadline of the deal is on Monday midday, when Hamas agreed to release all the hostages it has, including the bodies of the dead. President Donald Trump said he might visit the Middle East just as 20 hostages are meant to be released by Hamas. Aid has returned to normal as per the ceasefire deal, which indicates the starvation strategy was a deliberate Israeli strategy. As Gaza quiets down, the drivers of more war lurk further down the road, from the future of Gaza's governance to Hamas' unwillingness to lay down its arms. Gaza is devastated, and both Hamas and Israel benefit from a temporary pause as they shore up domestic and international support and allow their exhausted forces to recuperate. But the future of Gaza is still not determined, and Israel and Hamas have deep disagreements about what that future should be. Meanwhile, the United States under Trump has shown little interest in the finer points of resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It also remains unclear whether Trump is willing to force the Israelis, the main obstacle to a Palestinian-led Gaza, into compliance with any plan he might put together. As Trump takes a victory lap, these real problems will steadily erode the prospect that the ceasefire will become permanent. France has been thrown into turmoil again as the French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu resigned, less than 13 hours after unveiling his new cabinet, marking the shortest tenure for a prime minister in France's Fifth Republic. Lecornu, who took office on September 9, had spent weeks negotiating with political parties to form a viable government and explore ways to approve a budget for next year ahead of his general policy address. The move deepened the country's political crisis and left President Emmanuel Macron with few options. French politics have been in disarray since Macron called an early legislative election last year that produced a deeply fragmented National Assembly. Far-right and left-wing lawmakers hold more than 320 seats in the lower house, while the centrists and allied conservatives hold 210, with no party having an overall majority. The cabinet the French Prime Minister announced drew immediate backlash from across the political spectrum, including opposition parties on both the left and right, as well as members of Lecornu's own centrist alliance, who criticized it as either too right-leaning or not right-leaning enough, raising doubts about its durability in an already fragmented parliament. With less than 2 years before the next presidential election, Macron's opponents immediately tried to capitalize on the shocking resignation, with the far-right National Rally calling on him to either call for another early parliamentary election or resign. Appointing yet another prime minister would do little to resolve France's political deadlock, as any successor would face the same fractured parliament and fragile alliances that led to the downfall of Lecornu and his predecessors. This could compel Macron to resort to controversial constitutional mechanisms to pass a budget, which would only risk worsening France's already volatile political climate. As the war in Gaza entered its third year, the Cost of War project at Brown University has calculated that total U.S. military support to Israel over the past 2 years has cost U.S. taxpayers over $30 billion. Israel has received over $21 billion in military aid from the U.S., and Washington has bombed Iran and Yemen for Tel Aviv. According to the study, the U.S. has provided Israel with tens of thousands of bombs and other weaponry following the Hamas attack in southern Israel 2 years ago. The American arms have fueled Israel's genocide in Gaza. The mass killing in Gaza with U.S. weapons has pushed a growing number of Americans to oppose military aid and weapon sales to Israel. However, the growing opposition to the special relationship Washington has with Tel Aviv did not lead President Joe Biden or Donald Trump to curtail the flow of arms to Israel. President Trump also joined Tel Aviv's aggressive war against Iran and intercepted missiles targeting Israel. Overall, the U.S. has spent between $10 and $13 billion helping Israel wage wars across the Middle East over the past 2 years. The author of the Cost of War study, William Hartung, notes that it only calculates the weapons that have been delivered to Israel and does not include weapons that the U.S. has promised to deliver to Israel in the future. Donald Trump ran an election campaign promising no more wars and for the U.S. to rein in its global military presence. This clearly hasn't been the case with Israel, which is leading to a real split in his MAGA base who believe America first includes reviewing its relationship with Israel.